It's been about 3 days since the Quartero's Curios feature was added to the dashboard of Dota 2, and the thing that most people were curious about was the possible drop list for the bonus random antiques rewards drops at levels 5, 20, 40, 60, 80 and 100. On my Discord we've gathered probably the largest sample of those drops all in one place, so I want to walk through what those drops have been for the majority of players so far, speculate about the drop rates along the way, and finally explain what those rare drops for Arcanas and Immortals actually are and what that wording actually meant from Valve, with some real world examples of drops that players have gotten. Firstly, it's pretty clear that this random feature was some spare parts lifted out of the Candyworks Caravan feature we saw in Crownfall, because it seems to be playing in a very similar way, with almost identical item drops and drop rates. The drop list seems to include a selection of sets included in the Crownfall Candyworks Caravan rotation, with some of the worst drops in that list removed from these antique Curios drops, as these drops do seem to be weighted towards rare and mythical sets rather than commons and uncommons that we see in Crownfall, but there are still some common sets being dropped to players. There are also treasures which are dropping, and so far we've only seen the treasures which were also included in the Candyworks Caravan. This does mean, however, if you get a historic treasure in Dota 2, some of those do include couriers which can still drop an unusual version of those couriers, even though it's not displayed in the in-game engine, so I would encourage you to open those treasures anyway and see if you get lucky, because there was actually a small selection of players that got unusual couriers from the Crownfall Candyworks Caravan, and this is not a drop that many people knew existed, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Lastly, the Immortal drops turned out to be exactly the same as Candyworks and are just old Immortal treasures from the previous years of TI, just like we saw in the Candyworks Caravan. A quick note on these Immortal treasures, which include items like the Mace of Eons, most of them have historical escalating odds attached to them, meaning if you perhaps opened quite a few of these treasures when they were actually being released and were common, but never actually achieved the rare drop, you might just be a couple of treasures away from a very expensive item drop, but these escalating odds are, for some reason, intentionally hidden in the game, but you are able to check them through a web page on Steam with a very simple trick. I'll leave a link to the video explaining that trick below and in the card in the top right. Finally, the Arcanas which are dropping are simply just the Arcana drop list, which includes the following Arcanas: Legion Commando, Shadow Fiend, Lina, Terrorblade, Crystal Maiden, Phantom Assassin, Techies, Zeus, Ogre Magi, Rubik, Pudge, Monkey King, and Juggernaut. All of those Arcanas will drop in trade-locked and market-locked quality, as will all of the items in the Antiques drops, and this drop list does not include any Battle Pass or previously exclusive Arcanas like Wraith King or Windrunner, who have since later been released. Those are still not available as these drops. The Arcanas and Immortals are very rare, and with the amount of drops that everybody has gotten so far, mostly just one drop of Antiques per account at this point, maybe two, it's pretty clear that the drop rates for Arcanas or Immortals are something like 1%. In Crownfall, Arcanas were dropping at 0.3%, so 1 in 300 chance for each individual Candyworks reroll slot, of which you got 3 per reroll, so I would expect the drop rate here is probably closer to 1% if you were to combine those all into a single drop, and that does somewhat match up with the amount of drops we've seen and how many Arcanas and rare Immortals we've seen drop as well. If this 1% drop were to turn out to be accurate, this means you have about a 5.5% total chance of getting a rare drop over your 6 rolls if you manage to even get to level 100. It does unfortunately seem like there are no courier, announcement packs, or wards being dropped as rewards, which is unfortunate because those were actually some of the most desired drops from the Candyworks event. That's all I have to share to update you on the Curios Antiques drop list. This was possible due to the members of my Dota 2 Items and Info Discord group, who have all shared their drops and will continue to do so as we progress through this Antiques event. So if you want to join in and partake, or just want to join the free giveaways for unusual couriers or Arcanas, check out the link in the description, and thank you so much for checking back for this update and watching the video.